Efforts continue in Victoria and New South Wales to contain the further spread of coronavirus cases. In the last hour, New South Wales released its latest figures, with 15 new cases recorded in the last 24 hours. 8 of those are associated with the Thai Rock restaurant cluster. 6 are returned travellers in hotel quarantine and 1 is still under investigation. Meanwhile, authorities have issued a warning for people who attended funerals or church services in Sydney's West last week after a woman who attended multiple services from the 16th to the 19th of July tested positive. In Victoria, a control centre has been established at the regional town of Colac to manage an outbreak at an abattoir. It comes after Victoria recorded its deadliest day so far during the pandemic, with 7 deaths yesterday. Well, for more, we've got reporter Rani Hayman in Western Sydney and Leanne Wong in Melbourne. First to you, Rani. New South Wales Health has recently issued a directive saying anyone who attended the funeral or church services must now self-isolate. What can you tell us about those cases in Sydney's West?
Hi, Miriam. Well, that's right. New South Wales Health has confirmed 15 additional cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours up to 8 p.m. last night. 4 of those cases have been linked to a number of funeral and church services that were attended by a woman in her 40s from Fairfield who tested positive to COVID-19. Now, as a result of that, anyone who attended those church and funeral services have been urged to immediately self-isolate and to go and get tested for COVID-19 regardless of whether they have symptoms or not. They've also been told that even if their result does come back negative, they're still requested to stay in self-isolation until the end of the 14-day period. And if they do get symptoms again after testing negative, they've been told to go back and get tested again. Now, these funeral and church services were in Western Sydney. She attended St Brendan's Catholic Church on July 16th. On July 17th, she was at Ozia Funeral Services in Fairfield East. On July 18th, she was back at St Brendan's Catholic Church in Bankstown. And later that day, she was at a burial at Rockwood Cemetery. And the following day, on July 19th, she was at Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Mount Pritchard. Now, as you mentioned earlier, 15 of the new cases that have been recorded in New South Wales, of those 15 rather, 8 have been linked to the Thai Rock restaurant cluster in Western Sydney. 1 is under investigation and 6 are from returning overseas travellers.
And Rani, the New South Wales Police Minister has issued fresh warnings to those breaching COVID-19 rules. What did he have to say?
That's right. Well, we heard from the New South Wales Police Minister, David Elliott, just a bit earlier this morning, and he was doubling down on his warnings to businesses and to people who breach COVID-19 restrictions. He said that anyone, including individuals could be fined $1,000 and businesses could be fined up to $5,000 or even see 6 months of imprisonment as a result of breaching those rules. Now, he said that all comes in response to a number of breaches in the last 24 hours. Those include a woman in her 20s who was arrested for allegedly breaching COVID-19 restrictions several times. She's a returning traveller to New South Wales from Victoria and she wasn't self-isolating, so police arrested her there in Mount Druitt. We also heard that 2 private residences in New South Wales had gatherings of more than 20 people. They too have been slapped with fines by police. And we also heard about a party that happened in Thredbo in a national park where there was a DJ and apparently over 100 people were at this party. Police said that they got there not too long after people were told to leave. They said that they had several people that were fined as a result of that. We've also heard from Woolworths, and they are urging anyone who goes into their business in their Big W stores or their Dan Murphy stores to wear face masks when they go into these places. So here's a bit of what the Police Minister, David Elliott, had to say a bit earlier.
There are no 3 strikes when it comes to a pandemic. And of course, Those that want to flout the rules, and we have some examples of that over the course of the last 24 hours, need to know that there is a potentially 6 months jail sentence attached to what we are facing at the moment.
David Elliott there. And Rani, what's the latest on those schools in Western Sydney which are being cleaned after a number of students tested positive to the virus?
Well, that's right. So New South Wales Health have told us that there are 3 schools in Western Sydney that are currently undergoing cleaning so that students can return back at some point next week after 4 students tested positive to COVID-19. Now, 2 of those students are from Surden College in Marylands. 2 others are from the same family. One is from Mary Immaculate Catholic Primary School in Bosley Park, and the other is from Freeman Catholic College in Bonnyrigg Heights, which is where we are now. We heard from New South Wales Health that staff, students and their families are being urged to monitor themselves for symptoms of COVID-19 and to self-isolate if they do get any of those symptoms coming on. We know that 2 of those cases, 2 of those students are linked to a cluster of cases at Our Lady Lebanon Cathedral in Harris Park. And of course, all of those cases are linked to the Thai Rock restaurant cluster in Witherell Park, which we now hear has at least 60 cases in total linked to that cluster.
All right, we'll leave it there with you, Rani. Let's now turn to the situation in Victoria with our reporter Leanne Wong, who is in Melbourne. So Leanne, just take us through the numbers as they stand there in Victoria.
Well, Victoria recorded another 300 cases overnight. It's almost our 3rd straight week of triple-digit cases. That brings the state's total tally to over 3,700 active cases. Of those, most of them are concentrated here in metropolitan Melbourne, but there is a growing number of cases out in regional Victoria. There are now currently 147 active cases out in regional Victoria, and one of the most concerning is that there's now 43 cases out in Colac in Victoria's southwest. Now that cluster has been so concerning that the Department of Health has established an incident control centre out in Colac. Of those 43 cases, all of them have been linked back to the Australian Lamb Abattoir in town. Now that's currently been closed for 2 weeks while its 700 staff members stay at home and undergo self-isolating. We've also heard today that the ADF has been called in order to assist those efforts out in Colac. They've been brought in to help the control centre with contact tracing as well as providing supplies to people who need to self-isolate. We're expecting about 20 ADF staff members to come in. We spoke to the Country Fire Authority just this morning, and they say the Department of Health is getting assistance from Colac Health as well as the local council as well as emergency services. Now, that's not the only meatworks that's a concern here in Victoria. The Batocki Small Goods in Thomastown in Melbourne's north has jumped from 10 active cases to 57 just overnight. Now, our aged care facility cluster is also quite concerning. There are now about 40 aged care facilities across Victoria that have recorded at least 1 active case of coronavirus. And also there are also 600 healthcare workers who are currently active cases of coronavirus, of which 600 healthcare workers have tested positive for coronavirus, but only 300 of those are currently active. Now, with those aged care facility workers, there are currently 73 cases out in St Basil's in Fawkner and 68 cases in Estia Health in Ardea. Now, the Federal Aged Minister Richard Colbeck says about 400 workers have been recruited from interstate to work in Victorian aged care facilities to help out. But the Australian Medical Association says that these numbers are very concerning and they're asking for more federal assistance in regards to these numbers.
Efforts are being stepped up there, Leanne, and of course today in Melbourne we'll also be seeing the ADF out in force door knocking. What's going to be happening there?
Yeah, that's correct. That comes after the Health Department reported that 1 in 4 people who have tested positive have not been picking up the phone when they've tried to get in contact. Now, the Health Department says that they aim to get in contact with all positive cases within 24 hours in order to get the ball rolling on contact tracing as well as letting people know that they are infectious and do need to stay at home. Now, the health department says that they will continue to call people in order to get in contact, but they will make 2 attempts within a 2-hour period. And if people do not answer within that time, then ADF will be sent to their door. Now, Victorians are being reminded that if they are currently being tested for coronavirus and are awaiting results, they do need to stay at home and self-isolate until they receive a negative result. Otherwise, if they are positive and the ADF turns up at their door and finds out that they aren't staying at home, then the Premier, Daniel Andrews, says Victorians can almost certainly expect a fine.
Now, Leanne, in another development, Victoria's Department of Health has issued a warning about COVID-19 scam phone calls.
Yes, the health department says it's received a number of reports from people who are saying that they've been in contact with people pretending to be contact tracers. Now, these fake contact tracers have been calling up people and requesting their credit card information in exchange for sending over testing kits. Now, the health department says its contact tracers will never ask for money in exchange for testing kits, and that anyone who has been in contact with these fake scammers or believe that they have been scammed should get in contact with police.
With the latest there from Melbourne, our reporter Leanne Wong, and in Sydney, Rani Hayman. And we are expecting to be hearing from Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews later this hour. We'll be bringing that to you live on the ABC's News channel. A Victorian man has been arrested in South Australia's Riverland for crossing the border without a permit, breaching COVID-19 directions. Police say a member of the public reported a suspicious vehicle parked near the cemetery at Renmark West around 4:45 yesterday. A man was found sleeping in the car. A police check revealed he'd been refused entry into South Australia around 2:30 that morning. The 39-year-old was refused bail and will face court on Monday.